Checking the audio. What's up, guys? My name is Harlan. Welcome to my YouTube channel. If you don't know me, thanks for being here. It's nice to meet you. I'm an artist. I live in Dallas, Fort Worth. I grew up here, been here my whole life, and I make music and I make art, and I just kind of wanted to come on here and tell you guys a little bit of my story. This is a very spontaneous, sporadic video, so forgive me as I go through this process of trying to uh, express this story. It's 5 years in the making, and so I'm gonna try my best to sum it up in 20 minutes, but we'll see if we get there. So, welcome to my individual episode. This is episode 2 of the Everything in Between podcast. Everything in Between is all about everything in between, man. I love sharing people's stories, and that's sort of my goal with this podcast. And I figured after coming off episode 1 with Taj Haith, which you should please go check that out. I'll link that in the description below. I just feel led to kind of come on and do for episode 2, kind of hit the ground running and introduce you guys to me because I'm the host. So it might be a good idea, I figured. So anyway, yeah, I really just want to share people's stories. Everything in Between is really a shortened version of art and Everything in Between because I feel like this podcast is going to be pretty art focused. A lot of the people that I interview on this podcast are going to be people that are artists or creatives of some kind, but I really just want to give people a platform to just share their stories, share their wisdom, share their experiences, have a good conversation. So that's kind of what this is. But this is my story, so welcome to this episode 2. So let's dive right in. First of all, I'm 24 years old. I live in my dad's garage. I've been living here for a couple years almost now. And I want to start at the very beginning, though, and just kind of build my way up to how I got here and where I'm going. So when I first was growing up, I was surrounded by music. My family is extremely musical. Both my parents are musicians. And my dad is a jazz pianist and, really multi-instrumentalist. And my mom as well. She's a singer, incredible singer. But yeah, I grew up around music. And so, my first introduction to hip-hop, which is the genre that I typically fall underneath with a lot of my solo work, was really Christian music. I grew up in the church, and so I was introduced fairly young to people like Toby Mac, Kirk Franklin, Grits and DC Talk and Switchfoot. I was into that rock stuff too. The sort of and even outside of Christian music, like Linkin Park, was a huge influence on me as a kid. So it was just, I think it's kind of funny me listening to Linkin Park as a child. I don't know how appropriate that sort of was, but whatever. Given the dark nature of some of the songs, they're just kind of mature, I think, in thematics, which I wasn't aware of when I was a kid. I was just enjoying the vibe. But anyway, I grew up around music, so I'm following my prompt here, by the way. So when my eyes are going up and down, this is me trying to fit all of this stuff. By the way, also, I know the fans are making noise, and I apologize for that, but I can't. It's the middle of summer in Texas, and like I said, I live in a garage, so the fans are going to be rolling. I apologize, guys. This is the rawness of the podcast. That's why it's called Everything in Between. We're not hiding anything. This is all just raw reality, okay, for me. So anyway, continuing on, I got introduced to hip-hop when I was very young, through Christian hip-hop in particular. So when I began writing songs as a kid, I started in worship music. I would write songs on guitar, and I could play a few chords, and I would sing. I'd write them either by myself or with my brothers, which I have 6 brothers in total, so I got a big family. And all of my siblings are musical to some degree as well, which is pretty awesome. I think that's kind of a bit of an anomaly to have an entire family be musical. But we just are. We always were drawn to it. And so I was in a band with my brothers. We were called the Lawson Brothers Band. And we were shooting for the stars, man. We were trying to become a successful group, I guess boy band, if you will. Our genre kind of fell into this it was almost like worship slash like pop, indie pop. I don't know what I would really call it, but just songs on guitar that you would play that are sort of like poppy in nature. You know, Ed Sheeran inspiration, I guess, is probably the closest I'd put it for what we were going for. Jonas Brothers, that kind of thing. Pop, really, I think, was where we were trying to head. And yeah, we auditioned for America's Got Talent. We got through the first round here. We did not get on TV. You cannot find us the actual footage, but we got through the very first initial round, and so that was kind of a big deal as well for us. So yeah, and my mom as well, you know, auditioned in 2008. She auditioned for, or she won rather. She was the winning contestant of a show called Nashville Star. You may or may not be familiar, but it's a country music competition, basically similar to American Idol. And so my mom won that show, so she had a lot of things going for her for a while in the industry. And I was 7 years old at this time, so I was getting a lot of exposure, I think, from a very young age to the industry, and seeing it firsthand. My parents would gig very often, and so I was always around it. So at a certain point, I wanted to start recording my own stuff. Throughout high school, I became introduced to even more like secular hip hop, I guess you would call it, just mainstream stuff. Particularly, Logic was my first, I think, real inspiration towards, oh, maybe I also could want to try this. Through albums like Under Pressure and The Incredible True Story, I gained so much. I don't know what happened. Those two projects had an impact on my worldview, honestly. They were humongously, you know, integral in my adolescence. I was 15 years old, I think, when I first heard Logic's Under Pressure album. And throughout high school, I listened to The Incredible True Story on repeat, and even into my adulthood. And that was the first time I think I got exposed to that sort of side, I guess, of hip-hop that was very motivational in nature. And also, you know, just Logic preaching this kind of, hey, you can do anything. You know, do not let the world limit you. Exist creatively and be who you are. Make music like there's no Grammy. And that had a huge impact on my getting to that place that I believed that I could do it too. So when I started, my mom told me, now I'm lucky because I have parents who had big dreams themselves, and they told me from early on, you know, they fostered my talents. They never tried to kind of make me smaller. They were very encouraging of my musicality and my, you know, artistic nature, and so I feel blessed for that. But my mom was the first person to kind of doubt in my, shout out to my mom. I love you, Mom, if you're watching this. She was my first doubter that told me, or critiqued me rather, when it came to being a solo artist. And this is no shot to my mom. This is just, it was the first time somebody kind of told me, like, Harlan, this isn't really your thing. My mom told me when I had said to her that I'm going to produce my own music. This is right before COVID happened, I think. So I'm about 18 years old at this time, and I had become ever more inspired by Logic. I was rapping on my own now. I was writing rap songs on piano, and I was really wanting to get into producing. And so when I told my mom I was going to make my own album, she was like, Harlan, you're not really a front man. Those were kind of her words. And I'll remember it forever. I'm sorry, Mom. I hate that. This is not, again, she was right. Let me just clarify that. At the time that she gave this comment to me, she was right, because I was the background guy. I was the songwriter. Songwriting came naturally for me. I feel blessed in that right. That was kind of my gift. I felt always like it was easy for me to write, turn things into poems, turn things into songs. I had been songwriting since I was a kid. So stepping into hip-hop, which is all about lyricism, it didn't really intimidate me because I knew that I could do it. And so I saw the vision, you know, I told my mom about it, and especially with hip-hop, I think she was just kind of like, are you sure you want to do that, you know? And at the time, yeah, I mean, I could carry a tune. I wasn't half the singer I am today. I still don't think I have a voice of gold, but I think that I'm a much better singer today than I was back then. My range is incredibly high now in comparison to how I could sing when I was younger. When I was 18, I sang very low set. I was the bass, I'd just gone through puberty, so all I could do was sing low otherwise my voice was just going to crack. So I was very much in the background when it came to being in the band with my brothers. And so I think that was the place that my mom was kind of coming from was, Harlan, I think what she was really trying to tell me was you have a lot of room to grow, which was 100% true and valid. But I was no stranger to being a performer. I had grown up performing my whole life with my brothers, and I was also the announcer slash like MC for the band when we did events for the high school that I went to. It was a performing arts school, very tiny school, and so I was used to performing and being on stage, and I knew how to move a crowd. And I think when it comes to hip-hop, building hype and being able to move a crowd is an extremely important skill that I just knew I had it, man. It was one of those things that I feel blessed that it's ironic because I went through more doubt when I got into my last, more recent couple years lately than I ever did at the beginning of my recording process. When I was first learning to record, I was just having so much fun that it didn't matter if people believed in me or not. I just fully knew that I was going to keep trying until it became something. So moving forward, that led me to COVID happened, and I had all the time in the world on my hands. It was 2020. I'm 18, 19 years old, and I was tired of sitting around watching Netflix all day long. I wanted to learn a new skill, and what better skill to learn than music production? And so I began to teach myself on GarageBand on a Mac that my mom... So also, by the way, my mom, who was doubting me, also was the one who was, let me just, to her credit, was the one fostering me financially, I was living with her. She gave me my computer that I still use to this day to record music as a Christmas gift. She gave me my first real condenser microphone, which is the same model that of this one that I'm using now. And so, she believed in me, I think. I think she was just trying to give me that, hey, you got room to grow motivation, which it worked. It lit a fire underneath me. And I was kind of like, just you wait, Mom, I'm going to show you, And so I put a lot of work into it. I taught myself completely from the ground up. I watched YouTube videos. I just started messing around. To be honest, a lot of my education in music came about as me just messing around with things, just trying things. And I dove head first. My first album that I recorded and produced and released was a concept album about outer space. It was, again, very Logic inspired. I basically stole Logic's ideas when I was first writing. Not exactly, but my goal was, my dream when I was younger was I wanted to meet Lod. I was such a big fan of him that I was like, I want to meet him one day and work with him. So I'm going to write my concept album in such a way that if I ever meet him, we'd be able to combine our stories together and they would exist in the same universe, which that's a whole other video in itself, which I'll get into probably one of these days as well. There's so much lore. I've been writing a concept series story that is within all of my creative work when it comes to the albums that I've released under my name, which is Andrømeda. Like I said, there's so much lore there in itself. So my name as well, Andrømeda, I should probably talk about that, came about as me being a big outer space nerd. And so I did this concept album about space, this kid who builds a rocket and flies to the Andrømeda galaxy, which in real life is the closest galaxy to the Milky Way, which is the galaxy we live in, if you don't know. And it's on a collision course with our galaxy. And so I thought that was the coolest fact in the world when I was younger, and I learned it from Vsauce. Shout out Vsauce, man. I was such a big nerd growing up. Just loved outer space. So that's where the name came from. And that collision to me was kind of metaphorical in a way. Like, hey, if I'm Andrømeda, I'm destined to reach my vision, even if it takes 1 billion years. It's not about the destination. It's really about the journey, which is corny, I know. But I was all about finding that motivation, enjoying the journey, enjoying the process. And I really was. I fell in love with the process of making music when I was 19, recording songs in my closet, by the way, in my mom's house. And that fostered my second album called Closet Studio, which was inspired by that. And I just had big dreams, man. And so I kept going. I started putting work out. COVID started dying down to where people could go back into their jobs. And so I ended up working at Target post-COVID and hating it, hating my job, hating basically every day of my life. I was very depressed. My grandmother had passed away in 2019, and so a lot of also my pursuit of music came about as a result of grief and this need to um, fuel that grief into a healthy coping mechanism, which was what the music kind of was for me. And so, yeah, I continued creating, and I just became a powerhouse of motivation, honestly. I think that my true passion, I've said this to a lot of people recently, that my true passion is motivating other people. Music was just a medium of doing that. And so I became a real powerhouse, man, and I think it's because of those influences like Logic, who really preached that mentality. That mentality became ingrained in me when I was young, not just from Logic, but from my parents, from my brothers, from my peers around me. I just was lucky to be surrounded with people who were so optimistic, it was almost delusional. It was delusional, and I became that way. I was so focused on my vision of becoming a full-time hip-hop artist. That was the smallest goal in mind. But my big dream really was to take it worldwide and become known around the world, and impact as many people as possible. Really to show that, my story really is, I was a kid who didn't have the chops to do it. My first raps were so corny and lame. From an objective perspective, they were lame. They were corny. I really didn't have it, But I always felt in my soul that I had it. And I could see the vision. And I gave myself permission to be bad at it. And I just enjoyed what I was creating so much that I didn't care if it was good or bad or not. I was just having so much fun. Music was my hobby. As much as it was my passion and dream career, it was also my hobby. It was the thing I did for fun. And so I continued, man. For 3 years, I worked tirelessly at my craft. I became good at rapping. I became good at producing. And finally, things started to gain momentum. I began performing around Dallas-Fort Worth, making connections, meeting people, and I really was putting myself out there in ways that I never had before. I graduated high school. I said, forget college. I'm going straight. I know what my dream is. And so I just started going around and meeting people and saying, hey, I'm somebody, really was kind of how I was moving. Like, hey, you need to know who I am. It was probably cocky at times to some people, but I was just very confident in myself, very devoted to my dream. And I played open mics. My first shows were open mics around Arlington area. And my brother Maverick, who also is a hip-hop artist, me and him really started a journey together in a lot of ways because we were both doing the same thing. I wasn't doing the band with my brothers anymore. It was me really graduating into my own solo artistry. And it just kept growing. I met a ton of people. It was awesome. And then life happened. I think I was 22 when I did my first real venue show at a place called Tulips in Fort Worth. And things were finally kind of beginning to happen, right? And I just took a pause. To be transparent, I got into a very serious relationship. And then life just started happening. I slowed down. I was like, oh, I guess I don't really need to be always hustling 24/7. I think I learned the value of slowing down a little bit, and I needed it. I needed time to really develop a personality because my whole personality at that point in my life really was my music. And so slowing down was foreign to me, and I think it threw me for a loop. I went through a lot of crazy, insane psychological breakdown. Literally, it was an ego death, and I sort of lost myself, and I grew into my faith a little bit more, too, with God and with Christ in particular, and there was a lot of praying happening during that time. There was a lot of self-discovery, therapy, and really unraveling a lot of traumas that I didn't realize were still so evident in my adult self that I had to confront, unfortunately. And so, again, I'm fast-forwarding because I've been trying to fit this in 20 minutes, but the point is, I always felt destined for this, and It's one of those things. I'm now 5 years in, I'm out of that relationship that I was in. I'm rediscovering the passion of this journey and what it means and what I'm meant to do as well. And in a lot of ways, my heart is truly just to motivate people, because after, I got out of this relationship, I began to really have to just sit with myself, I think, for the first time ever, for the longest time that I had been single, and sitting with my own self, having to learn to actually like me. That was the biggest thing I think I had to confront, was the insecurity, the things that I didn't like about myself. And I had no choice but to now sit with myself at night. You know what I mean? There was nobody to bounce off of. It was just me and God, really. And so it sprouted this desire to try to cling on to what I had before, which was that motivation, that undying motivation. But it was gone. Honestly, it was completely gone. The flame was just not there anymore. I didn't see the point, because I had matured out of the materialistic part of my dreams. And so it felt pointless to go and be famous or successful to any degree, because what does it matter? Why am I doing it? I don't need money to be happy. I just want to feel at peace in the present. And I was really seeking that. And in this new phase of life that I'm stepping into, I've done a lot of healing and a lot of work and a lot of growth, and I'm feeling re-inspired again. And so my goal with these podcasts and stuff is just kind of tell you my story. As you guys get to know me, you'll get to know a little bit more of the deeper parts and the darker places that I went through. I'm not going to get into all of that today, but I just wanted to give you guys a general introduction to me and let you know that you're not alone. And as you walk your journey, I'm 5 years into making music. I literally almost gave up. A year ago, I was ready to completely quit. And I had to confront myself again recently and ask myself, is it that I feel like I can't do it, or is it that I know that I can do it and I'm upset that I'm not? And I think it was the second one for me. Like I said, since I was a kid, I just always believed in myself. I knew that I could do great things and that I could inspire people in a way that I believe God, gave me that purpose to motivate and uplift people. And in a lot of ways, because I needed to motivate and uplift myself, through a lot of dark times I went through when I was young. I needed that motivation. I wanted to be that motivation for others, and so that's my goal now. And coming out of that phase now, I'm creating again. I'm making this podcast. I'm working on a lot of new music. So that's kind of my story. It just was this crazy ride of, being a kid who was surrounded by art and creativity and just wanting to live that out, but often feeling like I can't exist in my own skin at times, because I didn't want to be too big and take over the room. I didn't want to, I didn't want to make people feel less than. It was like that was the opposite of my mission. But as my confidence grew, I could see that I was having that effect on people at times, where I was making them feel like, this guy's cocky. And I hated that. And so I think that was the first thing that made me start to make myself smaller, and I was afraid, So I'll leave you with this. I think the best way to sum it up, I said this to a friend recently, where, when it comes to getting back into this, I think my new why that I've discovered for why I'm doing this, why I'm doing podcasts, why I'm creating, first of all, just because I love it. When I'm creating, I feel like myself. And I've struggled to feel like myself in my own skin for years. So I'm trying to get back to that place where I can sit in my own skin and I feel like myself. I'm getting there. It's coming back in a lot of ways, which I'm excited about. But the other thing is that, that fire that I had that died, right? I really learned a big lesson in that passion is not guaranteed to last forever. And so if you can find something that's worth reigniting the flame, I think that is the thing that you want to stick with. With music, for me, the passion died, I think, 2 years ago for me. I didn't think I had it in me anymore. But at the same time, I was upset that the passion was dead. which to me told me that the passion wasn't dead, right? I thought it was dead. I was convinced because I was looking at it on a surface level. I was seeing a fire in the middle of the forest that had just a flicker of a flame left. And I felt myself blowing on this flame, trying to keep it alive, like don't let it die, don't let it die, don't let it die. When ironically, I was simultaneously the person that, at the same time that I was blowing on this flame to try to keep it alive, I think I was also blowing on it to keep it small. And I wouldn't let it breathe on its own. And the reason why, the way I put it to my friend when I told her this is, I think deep down, I'm actually scared to see the fire work. I'm scared to see the fire grow because I know that it could potentially burn everything. And what I mean by that is my personal relationships are going to change. The people around me are going to change. The experiences that I'm living in are going to change. And I'm going to experience a lot of loss through this journey of me trying to grow and gain more of who I am and more of what God has for me and more of my purpose in impacting others. It's just a byproduct of growth that you're going to lose things. You're going to have to leave things behind and people behind. And that has been one of the roughest parts, I think, for me of this journey of learning myself is the friendships and the relationships that I have unfortunately sacrificed out of immaturity, lack of perspective, and really just not being honest enough with myself and with others about who I really am. Not being a fake person, but just being like, this is what I want for my life, and being able to communicate that. I struggled hard with communication. I'm still not perfect at it, but I'm trying to really grow in that area, And, at the end of the day, guys, if you're out there and you have something that you want to do, that you're motivated about, that you're excited about, even if you don't have that thing, I think the fastest way to get there is to learn how to love being alive and look for those things that make you feel alive. Not everybody is destined to go do some insanely huge thing. Your purpose is not the same as mine. And your purpose is not any less important than mine just because I might get recognized for being a musician, right? Fame comes as a part of being a successful musician, right? It's kind of required if you want to be successful. You need an audience, right? So I think often people equate fame and music as this like, oh, these musicians think they're better because they're famous. But really, it's to me, it's about the impact that you have on people. And for some people, their purpose is to be a doctor, to be a lawyer, to be someone that impacts people on a day-to-day basis, to be a husband, to be a father, a mother, a sister, a brother, a grandmother, grandfather, a friend. Purpose goes beyond career, and we live in a culture where we worship the hustle and we worship success. And I want you to be inspired and encouraged that your purpose goes deeper than that. You're made beautifully and incredibly in the image of God, and you're loved, and there's so much that you can do when you understand that and you live that out. The identity has to come first so that it can flow from within you out into the world. You have to fill your own cup up first in order to help others. And my cup wasn't full. I was empty. I was depressed. I had given up on myself. And that's a low point to be at. When you give up on yourself, it's one thing for other people to doubt you. It's another thing for you to give up on you. So don't give up on you. Thank you for listening to this episode 2 of the podcast. There will be more. So that's such a Cliff Notes version. I have so many stories, and I'm going to try to break them down in more videos. And again, forgive my sporadic nature in this video as I'm talking. I didn't script this. I had bullet points at the beginning, and then I just went off on a tangent for the rest of it. So those who watched the full 30 minutes, thank you. Go check out episode 1 if you haven't with Taj Haith. He gives some incredible points. He's a writer and director and aspiring filmmaker, and he gives a lot of great inspirational advice in that episode as well. So thank you guys again for watching. I love you all. Make sure to like and subscribe. This has been Everything in Between.